certainly the death of the child. So the trick was, as you're making a movie, how do you move up some of the scary stuff, the big horror stuff, into the early part of the movie? Because in the book, it comes much later. I mean, the last third of that book is horror, but the front part of it is not, you know? It also took the studio a long time to find the courage to make a movie about a dead child.
May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and comfort you and lift you up.
Sometimes there's the shadow of the previous work, whether it was the book itself or whether it was an adaptation. Obviously, Pet Sematary was a film that was very popular. It is such a great example of what horror movies were doing in the 80s. The music, the Ramones, the tone, there's an element of campiness to it, but it still manages to scare the living crap out of you.
That film terrified everybody who saw it. Almost everybody you talk to knows that movie. They're like, oh, the first thing they say is that movie scared the shit out of me. I remember, you know, Stephen King wrote that script, and there's a strange combination of stuff that they were able to put into that movie from the book, because there's so much stuff in the book. And I think that was the triumph of that first movie. And it's probably the reason why we're trying to put all of these elements, Zelda and Pascal and all of these things, into our movie. I don't know that we would have had the confidence to do that if the first movie hadn't been done.
Since that time, horror movie audiences have grown to be a much more sophisticated audience. So the challenge was to find the version of Pet Sematary that would fit into our contemporary life and resonate with a contemporary audience.
But that's how we see it, really, as like a readaptation, you know, like not necessarily a remake of the other movie. That movie, I was a big fan of it when I was growing up. It had an effect on me. We're not trying to just kind of like retell the same movie. That movie's great and it exists. It's still there. We want to tell our version of it.
There were many starts and stops in the long development process where we really met with a lot of directors.
We're big Stephen King fans, so when we heard that they were remaking it, we definitely wanted in on it. But it took a while. We had to pitch it quite a lot, but they liked our vision for it, and they liked what we were trying to do with it. They liked that we wanted to go back to the book more.
With Dennis and Kevin, they had such clarity about what was significant about the book. They had such clarity about Stephen King and why people loved his stuff. And they knew what was missing from our script that was critical for the fans, and just what was great in the book that we'd have to find a way to put into it. And ultimately, we chose them for that reason, because they had a great sense of storytelling as writers.
They had this project for so long, and it had been developed like 10 years, I think, that I think they had sort of gotten away from the core source material. And so we made a big push to trust the book. And so a lot of our notes really were about getting things back to the original novel and being respectful to that. A, because we're huge Stephen King fans, but B, because that just seems to work. Fans and audience members really respect that.
Kevin and Dennis are both huge horror fans. I mean, just, you know, over-the-top horror fans. They know they kept talking about movies I've never even heard of, forget about not seeing. And so their passion for Stephen King and the genre and the uniqueness of their movies is the reason that we picked them.
I just love working with directors who are obsessed with the work, obsessed with getting it right. They don't have time to be prima donnas or preoccupy themselves with anything but what they're going to get, you know, and they see it and they know it and they know what they want, but they're eager to hear what you think.
Even though they're two directors, it's almost like they usually have like the same thoughts, and I guess it's really because they've worked with each other for so long and like complement each other so well.
What the producers have really done has taken a lot of courage to kind of invest in lots of people from from an indie background, really, and given them the chance with it's quite a hot property in terms of this script and this story.
Action.
What is this place?
Pet Sematary.
This story, you know, is more than just a horror tale. It's got real human drama. It's about grief. You know, you had this one scene that sold the whole thing, which was a mom comes home to her husband and finds him with their dead daughter alive and talking and walking. And how do you react? If you can't sell that moment, if you come up short, then the whole movie falls apart. You know, Amy, I knew her really as a writer and a director, and she is phenomenal. She conveys great sense of warmth, and, you know, you really like her as a person, and at the same time, she's able to do all the dark, tragic, grieving, exhausting stuff.
With Amy, we really pushed for her. That role is like a roller coaster ride emotionally. I mean, she has to have all these heavy scenes dealing with her sister and stuff. And Amy just knocked it out of the park. I mean, she's been like an indie darling for so long. She pops up in all these like great iconic independent horror movies. Movies like You're Next and The Sacrament. These great movies. And, you know, we got to like put her in this. It's just a lot of fun because we're huge fans of those movies.
Yeah, it was a huge asset that she was also a writer and director. It really helped shape her character.
There is a light that's curved right here. Do you want me to just stay in the corner so I'm not blocking anything? Or do you want me to pass through that light?
Well, Amy, I feel that she's so overqualified for us. You know, she's a fantastic writer and director herself. And yet, as a director, she knows it's very important to simply inhabit your role as an actor.
Could you raise the bed so that she doesn't have to go down?
We could do that.
You know what I mean? Because you want the bed in the shot, right?
Well, that'll be for the special.
I mean, when I'm acting, I have to take off my director's hat sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You can't have too many cooks in the kitchen.
The Wendigo.
In the role of Ellie is the linchpin of the movie. Other than Church the Cat, all of the horror comes from Ellie.
It's always hard to pin your hopes on a child actor. There are plenty of movies, and I've worked on a couple of them, where it was a good try, but not good enough. And the movie will fall apart without that character really being strong and also being believably evil, which is tough for a girl of that age.
We auditioned a lot of girls for that part. We would bring in somebody and they'd be great at the little kid stuff, being lovable, but they wouldn't be good at the horror stuff.
Jate, she did a fantastic job of both playing the sweet daughter and also playing the malevolent force that she becomes.
It's easy to find a cute and precocious kid. It's not easy to find a kid that could go from that to the dark, bad seed.
And action.
Stop struggling, you useless cow.
So we were always very worried about the second half of the movie, and can this young actress flip like that and be convincingly dark and ominous and evil?
She was the person I saw and I was like, that's her, when I saw her audition. If we hadn't found her, I don't know that you'd have a movie.
Jate's incredibly sweet and is way more professional than Jason, John, and I are.
It was really cool to be a part of a movie that really made you think about consequences and if you were to bring someone back, would you?
Trying to depict Maine, rural Maine, not in rural Maine, but luckily rural Montreal in the province of Quebec here in Canada has very, very similar overlaps in almost all ways.
I'm lucky in that I grew up in New England, so I know what New England looks like on sort of just a deep DNA level. And when we were debating on locations, I was the one who pushed Montreal because I knew how easy it would be to double Maine. Environmentally, it's very similar. It's the same kind of trees.
I didn't even know there was a difference between East Coast and West Coast trees,
I still don't know the difference. I trusted the people that...
Yeah, it's like, if you say so, and it's like, if fans are going to notice, then we want to make sure we do it right.
Then the house was a real battle. They looked forever, right? We tried to find houses closer to town because, ultimately you don't really get into the woods until you're an hour outside of any city. So ultimately we ended up an hour outside of town.
And that actually became probably the most difficult thing that we had to do in pre-production, was finding that main scary road there, a house close enough to the road, and then a forest behind the house.
You had to pick a farmhouse, an idyllic place you would move from Boston to Maine. What does that look like? To everybody, it looks slightly different, sometimes very different. There were probably, at the end of the day, a lot of arguments surrounding two different houses that had very different feels to them.
One was a blue house right on the road, and then there was our big red barn-like house that was set back from the road a little bit, but for me, it looked more like Maine, and the red house really stood out in the middle of the woods.
Finding the Creed's ranch solved a lot of problems. Not only did it have a great house that we're sitting in right now, but we did not have to do much to it architecturally. It was really actually embracing it for the most part as is.
And the back of the house was thousands of acres of forest, which ended up being useful to us because we got to shoot everything either in the house or just go into the backyard and shoot in the woods.
So we were able to find an amazing location for the Pet Sematary, amazing location for the deadfall. We were very, very fortunate to have almost a one-stop shop.
You know, you had the road, you had the house, we really shot inside the house, and really if you actually walked in the backyard of that house into the woods, there really was the cemetery. It was all in one place.
It was so great to shoot there, and it really provided us a great look. And it actually had its own pet cemetery. Not that we used the real one, but it was kind of exciting for everyone to know that there was a real live pet cemetery behind this house.
Then 400 meters down the road, we had Judd's exterior and interior house. The perfect shell of a house that was just getting ready to be renovated. They hadn't done any significant work. They'd done some work to the floors, done some replastering, but the old, the damaged ceilings were still up. So we were able to embrace that in a very, very large way. So this has, for almost 4 of the 8 weeks of shooting, become our backlot. So almost 50% of the movie we've been able to do in this one physical location.
Mud, dirt, Rachel's blood. As a costume designer, it's super difficult. I find it to keep things simple because we always want, to put more, brighter, bigger, shinier, more volume pleats. We want to do a fashion show every time. In this case, it was like, this show is not about costume, where there are no fancy costumes because we didn't want anything to be distracting. So the only thing that was distracting was pretty much the masks, and we prepped the mask for a good 4 weeks, if not more. Tried to pinpoint the perfect cat faces to put on that little girl was a lot of work. So we did so many different masks. I think we did 9 different masks, different shapes of cats, different colors, and different workmanship. So I had to show them all the different possibilities. That's what's pretty much with every piece, is even t-shirts. Show them all the different possibilities for them to judge actors. We don't have to show everything. I mean, this is like between you and me. If you wish to have a little piece of a rope in your pocket, if you wish to have a stone or something that may not go on camera, I can provide it. If it's going to help you become the character, that's the magic. That's the magic wand. It's like just give them the tools and poof, they transform.
These are all people's pets?
Well, Old Town's been using this place for generations. The graves get older, the closer you get to the center. See this one over here? I carved this myself. That's my dog, Biffer.
I looked back and talked to a lot of the friends that I grew up with in rural Alberta and asked for their memories of the local pet cemeteries. And the stories I was hearing and talking about the details of how they would dress those things became intrinsic to my realization that it can't be designed. It actually has to have naive rural artistic ability and that innocence of children dealing with death, making something beautiful but also sad at the same time. Ann Smart, our set decorator, knew a great artist and specialized set dresser by the name of Jennifer Small. So a lot of credit goes to Ann and Jennifer for coming up with a way to economically make a lot of these installations and create what I think is a really, really stunning set, layering this to the level of which that has, it's given it 100-year believability in 4 weeks.
Each grave has its own character, somebody's pet, and they went into great detail of having a little picture of a little dog or some sort of collar from an animal. And so each grave itself is an individual work of art.
People felt emotional. Crew members felt emotional going in there because it felt like a real thing, and it felt like, oh, we should be, respectful of this place.
It's amazing, I think, how much emotional recollection it triggers for people to when they had pets as kids.
We actually moved the ending from the basement of the Creed house to the pet cemetery because we loved it so much, because it looked so good. And we said, you know what? We got to move this whole thing over there and go back to the pet cemetery at the end of the movie. So that's how good it was.
The level of detail on all the grave markers, what they did with the deadfall and how long it took to build that thing, that was all practical. No CGI enhancement in any of that stuff.
21 Charlie, take 1B marker.
The deadfall behind it was the really giant thing, you know, assembling thousands of logs and branches and piling them up 17 or 18 feet and making it look like something that was designed to protect humans from that burial ground.
It wasn't just a pile of wood. It had to be hollow in such way so that we could potentially do some puppeteering from the inside. On top of that, there was just the structural demands of making sure that that was safe. We were going to have camera operators, actors, we'll have people on that.
You can give those a tug. Feel how strong they are? They're not going anywhere.
Then a lot of sweat by the greens department, bringing in branches that had the shape or form of human body elements and or felt, you know, just dangerous in that way. So a lot of dried pine and a lot of driftwood as well to get this almost bone-like quality out of the deadfall. It's not carved foam or the traditional elements. That is just real wood.
Just that little bit of landing. Chitay then approaches. Right. Then he does the shovel-less swing just with his arm.
Working with Laurie Rose, he was part of the pre-production at a much earlier standpoint than in many cases on these kinds of movies. Usually you don't have as much time with the DP being so involved in the pre-production. So this was a real benefit for the two of us. We were always trying to think of benefits and disadvantages for him just as much as what any location would afford me. So to be able to have those discussions constantly in pre-production allowed us to be very efficient with our choices.
Coming from right and crossing over.
We're getting notes back from the studio where they basically from day one are like, this is a beautiful movie. Wow, this movie's really being well made. And the reason they're saying that is because of the images that Laurie's designing.
So in terms of visual approach, the directors were quite keen on trying to subvert what you normally might expect. Often you might start in a quite a sedate, steady way, so it feels like there's some sort of classic formality to it. So it's all very flowing and gentle and nicely, beautifully composed. And what you would ordinarily do is then you kind of descend as the locks come off and it goes kind of crazy. That you'll get more and more frantic and more. We tried to subvert that and then trying to get slightly more eerie and composed as we move on.
We were big fans of Laurie before this. We'd seen all the films that he shot with Ben Wheatley and loved them. They all looked beautiful, and they also showed that he had this range. If you look at like Ben Wheatley's filmography, he's got everything from the shaky handheld camcorder stuff to really composed, beautiful shots. And we knew that this film, we wanted to sit somewhere in between that to where like it has sort of had a naturalistic feel and could feel very realistic and grounded, but at the same time it was going to go into these places where there was going to be some more fantastical elements that we wanted to bring a little bit of style into, and he had that mix of both.
Dennis and Kevin are so incredibly steeped in horror film reference that they can speak in quotes and they can talk in sequences from classic films, which is a challenge, that they can say, oh, of course you've seen that shot from that, and yeah, well, you know, and I go home and I quickly Google it and try and keep up. So what's great about that is that from a very early stage there was lots of visual references, but you rarely, some people do, but you rarely just lift a reference and do exactly the same thing. What you'll take is that composition or that the mood of something, and you'll transplant it onto your story. That's a way of kind of using a trick or a device that's been used before and making it your own, and then threading it into your story. So it's always a collection of all of those things. That's really exciting. Using references, you can go, well, we'll take that bit from there and that bit from there and that bit from there, and when you put it in a melting pot, it kind of, you make your own film. One of the references that I used that we kind of threw around between us was The Exorcist. It's not about a zombie apocalypse. It's about the experience of a very small family unit. And so I think we've tried to draw a little bit of that small unit, family unit dealing with this bizarre thing.
We think Church ran away, sweetheart. He didn't run away. Look, he's right there.
So I don't think that part of it resonated probably for me as a kid. What you really think about is your cat. I had a cat who got hit by a car, and, you know, I found him on the side of my house dead and stiff and all of that. So from that experience, it's sort of resonated, and I think as a kid, you probably think it's a book about a cat.
God!
The most challenging thing on a movie set, when you read a cat in a script, people go, oh my gosh, why would you do that? Well, you know what? It just takes time. Dennis and Kevin, the directors of this project, they're under demands, they got to get it done, and they're relying on us to get it done. What I'm relying on them is to give this the environment to do it in. And keeping a quiet, non-ruffled set is essential.
The cats are on set, and everyone would get quiet, and all of a sudden they'd come in with the cat, and you would always have to let the cat out of the cat carrier, and the cat would have to approve the set. Remember that? So the cat would always walk around and sniff the whole set, and everyone just had to shut up and just kind of, like a diva, let the cat do his own thing. And then once the cat was like, all right, I'm okay with this room, then and only then could you proceed. To see how well the cats were treated, they had something called, was it Cat Village?
Yeah.
And it was this giant like circus that they had set up for the cats where they had their own trailer. I mean, they were like treated better than like the main cast was.
It is a challenge working with cats, but it actually was way easier than I thought it was going to be, because going in, I didn't think you could train a cat.
On your bed. Down. Good boy.
I can't get my cats to do anything. Like, they scratch, the furniture, and I can't get them to stop. But like,
we can't train them, so I don't know how they do it.
So I just always believed you couldn't train cats.
It is relationship-based training, so we form a solid relationship of trust so that we can take them into environments that can be somewhat intimidating at first, like sets. And when they trust us, that it helps them overcome their fears. And cognition is decreased with stress. So when you use food, relationship, positive reinforcement, as in play, toys, then the cats enjoy the work. The other element of positive reinforcement training is training for the makeup. Lindsay spent 2 months teaching the cats to feel comfortable with grooming and bathing. And we do that with positive association. So day 1, trickle a little bit of water while they're eating. Every day they get a little more water, a little more makeup, until it's not a big deal for the cats. And that way they can go through makeup and they can go through baths, and this is not something that we're surprising them with.
And you really can't tell, I find, the difference between the 5 cats once you're in makeup.
All the cats have a different personality, so what we do is we run with their personalities. Tonic is the smart cat, being the busy, active, cute, super intelligent guy. He's the pre-grave church. And then we have the post-grave church based on their personalities and their looks. Quiet, calm, kitties that like to stare, that like to sit, and those are our out-of-the-grave cats.
That's a good boy. Yes, that's a good boy.
You got 5 cats, 5 different personalities, and you take all those pieces and you put together one awesome character.
Yeah.
Ellie really loved that cat, didn't she?
More than anything.
And you love Ellie.
Of course I do.
So follow me.
Both the Pet Sematary and the Deadfall, that's all here on location. So that part of the path and journey is very...
She's saying don't deny it. So that's a really interesting pivot for those 2 characters to take.
It was a trap. Everything went black.
It's okay now. You're home.
Thematically, what I find so interesting about the book and both movies is you can't run from death. It's gonna find you.
I can hear the woods.
Windows are closed, sweetheart.
Not like that. Inside.
You have this person walking around after having come back from the dead, and you have to find, again, that tricky balance of treating it as realistically as you can, but at the same time, though, aesthetically, having something that feels off and unnatural and scary, but isn't overly gross. We hired someone named Adrian Moreau, who we're huge fans of. This guy's done some of the best makeup for some of our favorite horror films. And he got it, and we really tried to get into the color of the skin and what the skin would look like, how the veins would look, how they would move. A lot of thought went into that, into making it, again, like unnerving, but not so visually distracting that you would check out as an audience, finding that sweet spot.
Adrian had originally come up with something a bit more pushed, I believe, for Undead Ellie. But
At the same time, they wanted to keep the innocence of the character of Ellie. So they didn't want the makeup to be the focus of her character. It's really about her performance. So we just did some simple veins. Adrian had designed the veins to sort of come up the side of the head on both sides and to give her sort of a gaunt look. And we would shadow the eyes a little bit just to bring the darkness out. And the makeup was relatively simple.
The artistry that goes into it, it's incredibly detailed. Just so accurate in terms of the way the veins look underneath the skin, or, you know, it takes so much time. It's like sculpting.
And then that sort of evolved as we added an eyepiece to her, which brought her eye down just a little bit.
Just something to make it a little off-putting, a little unsettling.
Yeah, the idea that you're seeing only the outside, but that eye is telling you that whatever's going on in the head and the back of the head is way more horrendous. You're just seeing, like, the mask. You're not really seeing all the damage that's been done behind the mask.
Love you, Daddy.
Cut, she takes on lunch, thank you.
We knew one of the challenges with working with young children is that they're limited to an 8-hour day. The second challenge with working with children is that if they don't have prosthetic experience, then you don't know how they will react and how well they will sit through a prosthetic makeup. But Jete is amazing. She has been absolutely perfect. She can sit through any makeup, and she's made her lives so much easier.
So you can just go puff and hit this. These things can go flying, so the next move you can do is this. And the last thing you do was exactly what you were doing. Grab this one, and you turn around. Puff.
For all department heads, you work as a team, as a family. You work very closely with everybody. Hair, makeup, costumes. You really are a family when you work together because it's the efforts of everybody that creates that one look. So Ellie, for instance, it's not just the makeup that makes Ellie look undead, it's the hair.
She interacts in a way that is really surprising and horrifying, and the execution of her makeup and the performance really support that in a way that I think people are going to find refreshing.
Never get out of bed again. All right, and you can go, that part you could yell, never get out of bed again. Okay, they're coming at her. That's the famous line from the book.
There was a time when we pondered a version of the film that did not have Victor Pascal or Zelda. And it just doesn't work.
Well, it's a big book, so you have to make choices, which is always tricky because you want to do everything. There's also a movie out there that's been done that people really dig. So you don't want to do what the movie did, but you also don't want to avoid what the movie did because some of that subject matter has to be in this movie.
But in the development of a script, there tends to be this desire to sort of whittle things down to one answer or try to clarify things to one thing. And so there were conversations that happened at some point, which was, do we need all this extra stuff? And the answer was, yeah, because it's Zelda.
Some fans, some people felt like the first movie didn't do enough Zelda. You know, we tried to do more. I don't think necessarily as a reaction to that, but it was a part of the story we were interested in, and it explained Rachel's character a lot about what is her fear and what's going on for her. So in that way, I think it was super helpful to spend some more time with it.
The idea of sickness in general is just frightening. I mean, like, if you strip away all the loudness and the sensationalism of the Zelda character, you're left with a very sad story about a girl dying in her room, and parents overwhelmed, the family not knowing what to do. So I think we were really interested in kind of the grounded, realistic nature of what that would be like. A lot of times that could be more frightening.
Zelda, honestly, on the day that we started shooting her, we started pulling off pieces of the prosthetics because she stopped looking like a girl. And it was really critically important that she was a 12-year-old girl, that it was, Rachel's sister.
We ended up modifying Zelda sort of on the spot. And I know in the end, we ended up taking it from sort of a more extreme nightmare version, and we brought it down a little bit.
We wanted you to be able to empathize and see the little kid underneath this monster.
Because her morphology is so distorted and so important visually, we had to find a way to reveal her back, her shoulders, her legs. So I'm making this little slip with buttons in the back. very tiny straps here with little puffy shoulders, so it gives her a little girl's look, but still reveal all the